Hello and welcome to episode number 58 of Behind the Impact. I'm your host, Jeremy Brown. In this episode, Christy Duncan Anderson, the executive director at the Albertsons Companies Foundation, joins the show. Christy, welcome to Behind the Impact.
Well, hello. Thanks so much for having me.
It is my pleasure. We have a lot to get into, so let's get right on into it. What I want to start off with first is to go back in time and start with how you actually got into this wonderful world that we call social impact. Can you give me that career journey?
Yeah, we gotta strap ourselves to the way back to get there, though. It's been quite a journey. After university, I decided to go into advertising, actually, and I was in advertising, working hard, loving it, had a great team, but something was missing. And I would tell our team, you know what? Why don't we go home tonight? We'd work really hard. Let's go home. We're not changing lives. We're not, creating world peace. Let's go home. And then one day I thought, what am I doing with my life if if I'm just kind of, like we're not saving babies, nothing is happening. So I kind of lost my mind in a way and decided to join the Peace Corps. And everybody told me I was ruining my life by joining the Peace Corps. But to be honest, it was the very best thing I ever did. The toughest job you'll ever love. Served in Bangladesh for a couple of years. And then after that, I was hooked. I spent time touring Southeast Asia, doing some work with anti-human trafficking. I moved to New York and did some artistic things, but then also started a nonprofit there. And then ended up in India again, in Calcutta. And then when we moved back to the States, with my husband. He's from South Africa. We did some work in South Africa as well, in Zambia and Zimbabwe, Southern Africa, I should say. I found a job in at a nonprofit healthcare center in the Bay Area where I'm from. And then I always loved Safeway and their positioning and thought, you know what, let's go to finishing school, if you will. And decided I got a job. I was only going to stay here for 2 years in the marketing department, just 2 years. Well, that was 20 years ago. We merged with Albertsons. I did spend 5 years in the marketing department. And then when the job opened up to run the Albertsons Companies Foundation, it took me exactly 2 seconds to decide that this is where I wanted to be. And luckily, the interviewers agreed with me. So I've been running the Safeway Foundation, now Albertsons Companies Foundation, for about 15 years now, which means I started as a toddler.
When you go back to the time you were in advertising,
Mhm.
there was clearly a pull, something that was pulling you to more purpose-driven work. When you think back during that time, can you put your finger on the thing that was pushing you towards this work?
I actually think I was going away, and I never suggest this, but I I actually think I was going away from some of the work that I was doing that I didn't find fulfilling. I went to Santa Clara University, which is the heart of Silicon Valley, truly the heart, because it's all about service, etc. And when I was in advertising, I was putting pictures in a magazine, and it didn't feel fulfilling enough. And so I joined the Peace Corps, and I actually I tell a story about my time there that really helped shape how I think about philanthropy and how I think about social impact. If you don't mind, can I tell a story now? And I've told this story, and I apologize for anybody who's listening to this who's already heard this story, but um, I was in the Peace Corps in Bangladesh, and it is a beautiful, verdant country where the people are incredibly generous with what little they have. And they have little. It's probably it's almost always the list of the poorest countries in the world. They have about half the population of the US in the size area the size of Illinois. So it's a very densely populated space. And there's a lot of poverty on a level that I'd never seen before. And you're there for 2 years, and after a little while, I'm always embarrassed to say this because it starts to become background. You walk along the street and you can't walk anywhere without seeing people begging. But at some point, I stopped seeing a lot of that. I just kind of kept walking. I always tried to help out folks, but at some point, you just stop seeing the need. It's just so ubiquitous in such a beautiful country with wonderful people. And there was one day, if I were to pinpoint a single moment, it was this day. I was on a train heading from the capital of Dhaka back to where I was stationed, and it's like 150 kilometers or something, but it takes 4 hours on the train. So, and so, we're sitting on the train, and I was waiting and waiting, and this little girl came in, and probably no more than six for sure, 4 or 5, I think, little one, and she had a little hat on, a string, and a cork, and she was going around like this, just whipping that cork around her head, begging for funds. And she kind of did her little show. And I put a couple taka in her bag. But then nobody else was giving to her, so she just kind of sat there. And by the way, I had bought just to show the inequity, I bought a third class ticket, and they were like, "Oh no, no, madame, you must not. You have to come into the business class with all the businessmen." So I ended up in a very while the other train cars are just heaving with people, ours was not. Um, Sometimes I took them up on it and sometimes I didn't. And this particular time I did. Anyway, this little girl stopped, and then she came over and she touched my hand because she hadn't seen somebody with my color skin before. And it didn't really bother me, but it did bother all the businessmen around me. And so at the very next station, they picked that little girl off and they took her off the train and just left her at a station. And this little tiny little thing, very calmly, as the train is going away, opened up her bag and started counting her change. And I thought, I did not stop that. I didn't do anything. I just watched that happen. And I gave her a couple of taka, but I didn't help her. I didn't do anything. What am I doing? What am I doing here? I As we're going away, I just wanted to jump off the train myself and go help her. Obviously, not a possibility, but this is all playing in my mind as I exited at my station. And as I got out, I saw that everybody was walking around somebody. And when I got to what they were walking around, I saw it was a woman. She was fairly young, but she was a widow. You could tell by her dress, and very, very weak, because part of the culture is when you leave your family as a woman, you become part of the family of your husband's. And if the husband dies and they don't have enough to feed people, they're not going to feed the widow. And so she couldn't go back. And so widows are in a very precarious situation. And this woman was in a very precarious situation. She was laying on the floor and everybody was just walking around her. And I thought, thinking of the little girl, I thought, I cannot just walk around her like everybody else. So I did what anybody would do. Any of you would do that. Anybody would do this. I walked over and I bought, you buy bananas in groups of 4. So I bought a hallie of bananas, and I came back and I was like, "Here are your bananas." And she was so weak, she actually couldn't even eat them herself. She couldn't. And so I actually sat there and I fed her 2 of the bananas. And then I'm not a doctor, but I started to get worried about her stomach. If it hadn't had anything, is it okay? So there was a woman sweeping. Then I said, "Hey, can you at the next call to prayer have 1 banana and give the banana to this other woman?" And she just laughed at me. So I went to the station master. Anyway, I finally found somebody who was willing to do it at the next call to prayer. And because it was getting dark and I'm a woman and I'm not allowed to be out after dark. So I went home, and as I got home, I was just kind of done. I was just finished. And I thought, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what the purpose is. I have not helped. I mean, I couldn't help that woman. I couldn't help the girl. I walked by how many people. What am I doing here? It's just so overwhelming. There's so much need, and I'm only one person. How can I help? Like, what could I possibly do? And as I'm throwing things in a bag, I start to hear some singing. And I lived with a family kind of in a single, like a duplex type of a thing. And I went over to the family. I said, what's happening? And they're like, we don't know. And I said, all right. So I ignored it. But the singing got louder and louder. And finally, I went outside and I was like, what is happening? What is all this singing? And they said, oh, Christy, madame, we heard about you at the train station and we want to help. And I looked around, there were all these people who had heard about something that anybody would have done, right? Like it wasn't, there's no heroic act happening here. In fact, it was almost anti-heroic act that I was doing. But this one act had inspired all these other people to help out too. And there are all these people who had shown up and said, we heard about what you did and we want to be a part of this. And I stayed. I finished my service, and they still now exist. They call themselves the Banana Brigade, which doesn't sound any better in Bangla than it does in English, but nonetheless, they they continue to do work whenever they see somebody in need. They try to help them, and they've done a lot of great things. So it really has formed a lot of the way I think about social impact. Me as a person, I'm just sending emails. That's all I do, right? I write emails and I talk to people all day long. That's really all I do. There's very little, especially we focus a lot on hunger and childhood hunger. It's a big problem. It's a huge problem. 1 out of 5 kids, as many as 1 out of 5 kids go hungry every day and in the United States. And what can I do in the face of that much? Well, not much, to be honest. But what can we do? We can do a lot. I remember a poster, I think it was at church when I was little, and on one side had a woman with a little thought bubble that says, what can one person do? And on the other side had a whole crowd of people all with the same thought bubble. And I think that's kind of how we're walking around. And I see our job as pulling that thought bubble together. We're the great aggregators, right? We're the aggregators. Almost everybody wants to do something good. Almost everybody wants to leave the world better than how they found it. And our job is to pull people together and to aggregate the goodwill of everybody, to pull those thought bubbles together and to bring people together to do a lot of great things. So while I don't do very much, we still, every single day, we feed about 360,000 people, or enable 360,000 meals with the work that we do. So my mom always asked, do you make sandwiches? I'm like, no. Do you get the food? No. What I do is send emails. And like I said, emails and talking. But that emails and talking helps other people do a lot of great work. And then all of us together are able to do so much more. And that's a lot about how kind of was formative for me in thinking through how to, attack the social impact world.
How did that experience? Number one, it's a powerful experience.
Very.
You mentioned that it shaped you and your approach to social impact. Can you unpack that a little bit more? How did it shape you?
Yeah, I think it showed me that, well, I mean, like I was saying, like one person can't do a lot, but you can't give up there, right? You can't give up saying there's nothing I can do. And I talk about this study all the time, but I don't know what it was, but there's some studies that have shown that if you show people, hey, would you like to help this one person? Most people say, yes, I'd like to help this one person. If you say, hey, by the way, would you like to help a lot of people who are in the same situation as this one person? Most people get overwhelmed very quickly and then don't help. And so I think that overwhelm nature that we have needs to be overcome. And through that experience, I saw how together we really can do a lot. And that my lot in life, at least right now, is the aggregation, right? If you give, we ask people to give $1 at the check stand, and $1 isn't much, but it sure adds up to a lot. And so I think that experience helped me appreciate that all the pieces go into a larger story, and that really most people do want to help. A lot of people, all those people probably walked by several different beggars that same day that they came to my house and started singing. But yet they wanted to do something, and that people are people are good. I really believe that. I really truly believe people are good, and I think that that story, that experience helped me see how I can be of use in harnessing that good.
Through that experience, has it impacted how you look at partnerships and coalitions? And you mentioned the work that you're doing is about aggregation.
Hmm. I mean, I'm learning every day in coalitions. I learn from the coalitions that we have. I learn so much from all the different groups that we have. Um, but yes, one person isn't going to solve any of this, right? None of us are going to be able to solve it on our own. We're going to have to work together for these big intractable problems that we're all trying to solve. I think that power of aggregation, and also um, it's hard to ignore the power dynamic that exists when you are a US citizen abroad in a country like Bangladesh. And I think that the the team there really taught me to listen more and to trust people. In the beginning, when they started, I it wasn't started by me. I didn't start it. I didn't even want to do it. I was packing, right? So I was packing. I was done. I think that that those individuals really showed the importance of listening to the group. And then also later on, I started learning more and more about the importance of listening to people with lived experience, because some of the other work that I did there had to do with a lot of different it's about children in the brothel, et cetera. That it was the other work that I was doing. And listening to the word of people with lived experience is a big lesson that I learned through that.
Prior to the merger with Albertsons, you were at Safeway and you were the executive director of the foundation there. What did the foundation look like?
Very different to it does now. It was very much a top-down approach. Our CEO got prostate cancer, and so we started raising money for the Prostate Cancer Foundation. I always joked that it would be advantageous for me to see if I could find sentries to keep people out of some of our executive offices, because sometimes these organizations would come in, well intended and wonderful organizations, all of them, but they would come in and they'd do what I call the make you cry video and presentation, and then the executives would be very moved and decide that this is what you know that we should be doing something about this. And I don't disagree with them. There are lots and lots of great causes out there to be supported, for sure. But it was very much what the executives wanted. That's what happened before. And I imagine you want me to talk about now, how it's changed and how we changed
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I'm curious to learn, so we go from Safeway, then 2015, the merger happens, now the Albertsons Companies Foundation. What does that look like today?
Yeah, well, just to kind of stick in my Wayback Machine again, we before the merger happened, kind of looking around, we were supporting people with disabilities and breast cancer, prostate cancer, and other things, all great causes, veterans, etc. But and I said this in your event. We're a grocery store. They keep saying, "Hey, everybody, do you think maybe hunger is something we should think about?" And this is when we were Safeway, and they all said, "Yeah, yeah, well, hunger is good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But don't take my pet project away." And I was, okay, okay, we won't do that. But can we add something? And I actually did some research. I asked our customers. I got together with our team here, and we did some research to ask our customers what they thought we should focus on, and then also what made the most sense to them. We had planned a preliminary research and then a larger study, which, is obviously much more expensive. The preliminary research was not directional. It was exact. It was clear. The graph was everything else in hunger. We actually ended up not doing the secondary research because it wasn't necessary. But took that research back to the senior leadership team and said, hey, our customers, they really think we should focus on hunger. They want us to focus on hunger. They care about hunger, and they think that hunger is the right place for us to be focused on. So sharing that with our executive team was a huge step. And they kind of said, all right, well, you can do it, but don't take away that can be your pet project if you want. It's not a pet project at all. It was just, data. So we started our program focusing on hunger, but it was only one thing of six. And, it was kind of just chugging along. And then the merger happened. And we went from a very centralized organization to a very decentralized organization. So then I had 2,300 stores all doing their own thing and trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this? And went to the new leadership team and said, hey, everybody, we weren't public at the time. And I said, we're going to go public at some point. And my guess is you're going to want a story. Right now, I have 2,300 stories. Which one? Pick one. Pick a story, any story, and they're all different. But my guess is you're going to want, and thinking back to all the power of aggregation, my guess is you're going to want to make some big statements, some big goals, some big something when we go public. So we should. And they said, well, we can, yeah. Let's just, we can keep this hunger thing going. Anyway, so fast forward many years, and now Nourishing Neighbors is our hunger platform. It is the largest platform. We have two big goals. One is 1.5 billion meals enabled by 2030. And then we also have a goal, which is quite unique, of $10 million annually towards ending the cycle of hunger. So not just feeding people today, but actually working on projects that try to end the cycle of hunger for our neighbors. And so now that's our biggest program. We're all leaning into it. We have a big campaign that is, I'm not sure when this will air, but a big campaign that is starting July 1st through the 7th. It's called Nourish the American Dream. And it's all about childhood hunger. And it's all leaning into what kids can do when they're fed and how important it is, because the American dream starts with a full plate, we say. But this campaign is completely different, totally and completely different. It's think of it like a Giving Tuesday, but in July. So we have over 260 organizations who have signed up to join us to raise funds. They're all raising funds for themselves during this time. And we're really trying to create a groundswell of support and leaning in even more to the aggregation mindset of, okay, we've done a great job of aggregating within our stores and within our company, but how can we aggregate on a larger scale? So we have a goal of $5 million donated. We are matching 2.5 million to all of our partners during this time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes.
2,300 stores. That's a
Yes,
lot.
just under, yeah.
That's
The
still
number
a lot
two.
of stores.
Yeah, we should say 2260 something. Yeah.
How are they involved with the work that you're doing?
Yeah. Our stores are, our stores are where we raise the funds. We raise most of our money in store through the check stand and the pin pad. And I have to tell you, some of these stores, man, they really get behind it. They are so excited each time we do a fundraiser. They put up, they make some kind of banner out of toothpicks and what that looks amazing that I could never do. They get really, really invested in some of these causes, mostly because every dollar we raise stays where we raise it. So that is really a unique thing, is that we do not have any national, except for that 10 million nationally, but otherwise, every dollar we raise, we invest right back into the area that we raise it. And so the stores really see the impact directly in their own town. We can tell them, hey, the money that you're raising is going to that organization down the street and that organization just over the hill or something, and so it's very, very localized and very personal to them. And we do a lot of work working with our nonprofit partners and saying, hey, go in, say thank you to your store. They're raising money for you. It's all very, you know, hyper locally connected because, as I mentioned, Albertsons is and still remains, for the more or less, a very decentralized organization. So it's all about the local feel of it's. We like to say it's locally strong or locally great, and so this kind of connection to each and every neighborhood is where we like to play.
In terms of the nonprofit organizations that your team supports, how do you select those organizations?
I don't. I don't I don't make sandwiches. I don't give out sandwiches. I don't buy the food for sandwiches. I don't even decide. I make policy. So what we do is we'll have an RFP. For example, in September we raise funds in stores specifically to connect people, because the way we think about it is ending hunger today, tomorrow, and forever. And under that tomorrow side is connecting people to federal programs. So we raise funds specifically to connect people to SNAP and WIC and to strengthen those programs. And we send out an RFP, and really that RFP list is astounding. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of organizations. We send it to our store teams. They can send it to any organization that they like, etc. And that RFP, all of that data, all of those applications come in. My team, really, Anjana, my team, if anybody who knows us knows her, she's incredible. She goes through and she makes sure that she's only sending the qualified ones. Then we tell our local areas, hey, this is how much you raised, and here are the qualified organizations in your area. Let us know which ones you'd like to fund.
I see. So the local stores essentially have some skin in the game. They get a chance
Absolutely.
to select the
Yeah.
organization they want
Well,
to be.
more at a division level and not at a store level. So we have stores and then they have divisions and then, yeah. So, but more at a division level. And some of the divisions, they really ask the stores for their input. Others, not as much, but those local teams definitely have all the skin in the game. It's really their money. We're, like I said, I'm just making policy. I'm saying it has to go to this. And as long as it goes to that, you're good, and we're going to give you all the applications. I can't be an expert on what's the best organizations in Denver and in Chicago and I can't be an expert on all of that. And I think it's really important that we have boots on the ground who have that hyper local knowledge, because it keeps the people who are closest to the problem often closer to the funding source, right? Like it'd be very hard to get to me in the San Francisco Bay Area if you're in a small organization in Chicago, but it's a lot easier to get to your store. And so it really, I think the brilliance of it is we are really hyper local and finding those organizations who are doing some really great work. But they're doing the work. They are my heroes. They are doing incredible work, all of them. And while I'm sitting around, talking and sending emails, they're out there every day feeding our neighbors, and I'm forever grateful to all the work that they do.
As an executive director of a foundation, if you met with another practitioner that maybe just started his or her foundation's journey, what are some of the pitfalls that an executive director, a new executive director, should be aware of?
Man, I fall into all of them. I think sometimes the right solution takes a minute to be known. That if you jump into anything too quickly, you may regret that, because once you start funding or doing something, it's really hard to reverse out of it. Um, I learned fairly early on in this career, the hard way, that strict guidelines are your friend. It feels mean. to put strict guidelines and say it has to be this, it cannot be that. But it actually helps you, it helps you say no and it helps you say yes. The job, my job, is really often the art of saying no. We have to say no so much more than, unfortunately, than we get to say yes. And I always say I'm the one who has to say no, but the local teams are the ones who get to say yes because it's more fun. So it's really, it's a lot easier if you say, look, we're only looking at this geography and you're outside of this geography. We love the work that you're doing, but you don't qualify. That's a lot easier than, well, we just didn't like it. It gives you a lot of parameters to be able to determine what fits and what doesn't fit. You have to always have a little bit soft of boundaries, but you definitely have to have boundaries, because that helps a lot in um, in saying no, that unfortunately you have to do a lot. Man, I wish we didn't have to do it at all, but you definitely do.
At this year's Social Impact World Forum, we talked a lot about driving business value through impact.
Mhm.
I'm curious, how, what do you think of driving business value as a impact practitioner?
It's a little bit hard for me because I run a foundation and there are lots of rules around that, but there are other parts of my job that don't involve the foundation and thinking through. Um, here's the thing: the government isn't going to solve these problems. They're much more efficient than a lot of things, and not saying something, but we always say, the government's going to be a lot more efficient than any nonprofit in solving hunger, but still, it's not going to be able to solve it on its own. The nonprofit network isn't going to be able to solve these problems, because it's just so much in the way that nonprofits are set up. We're not going to be able to solve these problems unless we solve it through businesses. I think it has to be a three-way partnership between those three entities, and I don't see, especially now, uh, not intending to get political at all, but there are some changes that have happened, especially in the hunger space. And, with some of those gaps that are happening, the nonprofit world isn't going to be able to pick up those gaps. We're going to have to figure out a way to do it through businesses as well. And you do well by doing good, right? And so I think there's so much opportunity for that. I always say when people ask me, what do you love the most about your job? I say it's exactly the same thing as what I hate the most about my job. And that is that there is so much opportunity for us to do. And the hard part is there's so much opportunity for us to do, right? Like there's so much more we could be doing, and there's only so many hours in a day, so much, bandwidth, etc. But I think it's the path forward. I think it's the only path forward, for businesses and for the world at large.
And speaking of opportunities, when you take a step back and look at the corporate impact landscape, where do you think practitioners should be spending their energy in terms of what's going to help them build a more durable function within their own companies and what's going to help progress the field of impact?
That's a big question, Jeremy. That's a tough one. Um, I think that the closer the cause is to the business, obviously, I mean, this is an obvious one, right? Obviously, the easier it is. For example, when we were doing prostate cancer, that was much harder to get a lot of people enthusiastic about it versus when I'm talking about food and feeding people, right? Um, so I think the more attached to the business line your work is, the more fireproof it is, if you will. Um, I also think that, one of the stories that I think we don't tell often enough, especially for us, is that, our associates are our neighbors too, and by strengthening our neighborhoods, we are also strengthening the neighborhoods where our associates live. And I think that's very important, and that makes happier associates, etc. Which is, I think, a story that we don't tell internally to kind of fireproof the work that we do enough.
Bringing your impact areas closer to the business, that is actually something that I'm seeing more of from
Mm.
practitioners as I chat with them. Uh, to your earlier point, we all want to solve problems and be helpful and do as much good as we possibly can, at least most of us. But you have to say no. You have to narrow your focus because if it's outside of the realm of what your business does, it's not going to be as effective.
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, it sounds so, I guess maybe some of the best solutions are the simplest, right? The most elegant solutions are by definition the simplest. But yeah, I mean, I think the more aligned we are with the business and the business goals, I mean, if you think about it, the more people have in their pockets to spend in food is good for us, right? So the more people who are connected to SNAP is good, right? It's good for everybody. It's a good thing all around. Um, and I think that as you also try to go out into the world and see change, I think we have to think about, what um, be very, very clear on what is the change you want to see and what your change theory is and how, what somehow have a change theory, but also be open to learning. One of the best things that I did was not trust myself. That's funny to say. But when we first started on the hunger space, my biggest concern was that I'm the one doing it. I don't have a background. I don't have a degree in hunger, and I don't have any of that. And so, recognizing that, I reached out to people I didn't even know and hoped and prayed, but got together this advisory group. And the advisory group is now the CEOs of all the major hunger organizations: CEO of Feeding America, CEO of No Kid Hungry, FRAC, Hunger Free America, Why Hunger. All there's a bunch of them. There's 10 actually of them, and they sit on an advisory board. And I listen to them. They advise me. There have been times when I have had the best idea I thought in the whole world. We're going to do this, and I'm so excited, and this is going to be great. I can sell this internally. I know they're going to love it. It's going to be fabulous. Here's my idea. I remember sitting in front of them in New York City, telling them about this in a room, so excited, finish my presentation, and there's dead silence. And I was just looking around the room, and then one of my mentor, they're all mentors, but one of my closest mentors and dear friends, she said, Christy, please don't do that. It's going to hurt our work. It's going to hurt the work that we're doing. And we've been trying to move in this direction, and you're moving in that direction. And by you moving in that direction, it's going to harm the work that we do. And you know what? I was so excited about that idea. I still am. But anyway, I'm not going to do it because I don't, I'm a nerd in case you haven't figured that out yet. But I don't happen to be in the office at the moment. But if you were in my office, you would see it. There's a big do no harm messaging in the office, because that's our prime directive, right? Like we want to be very careful that whatever we're doing is additive to the cause and not against it. So, but finding those experts and those mentors to, even though you're super excited about an idea, but you're actually going to harm the work that you're trying to get forward by doing it, has been just invaluable.
Let's end with this.
Okay.
What's something that you now know in regards to impact work that you wish you would have known earlier in your career?
Can I give you two things? One is that the group of people who work on this are amazing, incredible people. And most people are super happy to talk and super happy to give advice and super happy to show up for you if you just ask the question, hey, I have this idea. What do you think of it? Most people are, and I wish I had known that and leaned more on the people around me when I first started. And the second is what we were just talking about is I wish I had I wish I had known that the more stringent you make the guidelines, the easier it is to say no, because the job is a lot of saying no. And even though it feels bad to start with that, it's actually better.
Christy, thank you so much for joining me for the leadership.
Such a pleasure.
That super, super compelling story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. And I really appreciate you. I hope you know that.
This episode is brought to you by Social Impact World, the intelligence layer for corporate impact. To learn more, go to socialimpactworld.com. I'm Jeremy Brown. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Behind the Impact.